welcome back to NUIC football as we get ready to kick off the 2024 season. I am your host, Kyle Kammeyer. I am back leading the charge, leading the way for what seems like an eternity now, but it's my ninth season at the helm of doing this, and boy, has it been a lot of fun. Right now, we have a great slate of games just to get us through week one here, both in 8-man, the NUIC, and there's a lot of other big games across the state as well as we begin the quest to get to Monmouth and to Bloomington once again here in 2024. So without further ado, we're going to kick off with our 8-man schedule for week one of 2024. Our first game that we're going to talk about is the game that a lot of people have marked on their calendars, myself included, and that is Ridgewood at Amboy. This is a rematch of last year's state championship game, a game that happened actually twice in the year as they met up in week 5, where Amboy won that game 48-42. And then again at Monmouth, where Amboy put a running clock on Ridgewood, winning that game 74-22 for the most impressive state championship game in IHSA history to this point. These two teams are going to meet up in the regular season twice. Week 1 and again in week 5. This one kicks it off as a non-conference or non-divisional game as IHSA has gone to a 4-division slate. Amboy moving out of the North 2 division, moving into the now newly formed West Division. So they're going to meet up with Ridgewood twice this year. One game will count as a conference game. One game will count as a non-conference game. This week 1 game is a non-conference game. But at the end of the day, it doesn't even matter. All that matters is getting wins and driving home from it. Both teams are going to return players from last year's state final runs. Both teams lost some key players, and both teams returned some key players as well. This is a great game for both teams to get the right foot going forward in week 1, as these two teams both are going to crack the top 5 in our state rankings for the year, which we'll get to later. But right now, the head-on favorite for the 2024 season is the team that walked out the state championship last year in Monmouth, and that is Amboy. So, right as far as I'm concerned, Amboy is my pick to win, but Ridgewood has some experience under their belt coming off of a quarterfinal run in 2022 and now a state runner-up in 2023. They have the right staff, the right group of players. They're hungry. They know what it takes. And this game is going to be one that people are going to be looking at. But Amboy is my pick to win. Our next game will take us to Milledgeville, where the Missiles are going to play host to the AFC Raiders. The Raiders had a tough 1-8 season coming off of a 2022 playoff appearance. It doesn't start easy in this new North Division as they're going to travel to Milledgeville, who is coming off of another quarterfinal exit with more gas in the tank. Milledgeville's coming back with a bunch of guys that can turn the game around. They have a lot of team speed. They do have to replace, Connor Nye, of course, at quarterback, but they have Evan Shank to fill that role. They're going to have some guys that are going to be game players that were able to make some big names for themselves last year, continue to shine bright, and will continue to bring Milledgeville to the forefront of IHSA in 2024. The Missiles are definitely going to be a team to watch as we go into this year. Is this the year that the Missiles can finally get over that quarterfinal hump? We will see. Each of the last 3 years, they've made the quarterfinals, and then they've lost. So now it's time to see if Milledgeville is for real. Can they get further down the line? I feel that this is a team that can definitely do it in a field that is showing a lot of teams that have to replace a lot of key parts. Milledgeville is one of those teams that has a good, strong core strength returning and will definitely be a team to keep your eye on. Milledgeville rolls in week 1. River Ridge at West Carroll is the next game we're going to talk about. River Ridge returned to the playoffs last year for the first time since 2019 with a senior-driven squad. Some new faces hope to keep that streak going. West Carroll is new to the 8-man game, but they bring a lot of youth that have some varsity playing experience at the 11-man level. This game is going to come down to what team is going to be able to execute right out of the gates. River Ridge has the advantage on their side. They have a lot more experience in the 8-man game, but the youth part of it is where they're going to have a little bit of complications getting up to speed, making sure that they're playing at the level that they need to play at in order to get them back to the playoffs. West Carroll has experience on their side. They got tore up in the daunted NUIC schedule last year, but they made the transition to 8-man. They have some returning players that can play some critical roles for them in a more wide open style game that 8-man allows. And they could be a team that could go from 0-9 to a potential playoff contender in year one. And we've seen that happen before. West Central just a couple years ago was one of those teams that did that, and eventually they became a state champion. So, anything's possible. This game's going to be a big game for both teams to start off week one, get that win under their belt, and hopefully guide them in the direction of landing a playoff berth in 2024. The Broncos are going to open up at home on Saturday as Alden-Hebron travels to Orangeville. The Little Giants won the games that they were supposed to win last year, but didn't match up with the teams that made the playoffs and left them at home at 3-6. The Broncos are one of those teams returning from a playoff visit last year, and they have some guys that are returning that give them some experience. But like a lot of teams, they have some big key players that they need to replace. They need to replace those guys in a hurry. And if they do, with the new revamped North Division schedule, you could see Orangeville potentially making some noise once again. There's some people that have some high hopes for Orangeville. There's a lot of good things and vibes coming out of the Bronco camp. But the only time will tell as they get in there. They got to start matching up with some of these teams. The new North Division does look a little bit favorable for the Broncos to see that happen. And, there's some believers out there that will look at Orangeville and see that they have a good season. So, this game on paper says that Orangeville should blow it out. But you never know until you play the game. And this is a big one, and they get it started on Saturday. The last game we're going to cover on the 8-man schedule sees South Beloit head down to Polo. The Sobos were cooking with gas last year through the first 5 weeks, making people think that they were a team to watch. A Week 6 injury to Caden Meyer saw that dissipate with 3 consecutive losses to state-ranked teams, and South Beloit could not recover. Polo returns off their 4th consecutive semifinal appearance. They have lost 8 games since they entered 8-man in 2019, establishing themselves as an elite team in the IHSA. They will rely on a lot of new faces this year to hopefully keep that trend going. And with that, they also provide a lot of good experience coming back with their coaching staff that will probably be able to get these guys up to speed faster than a lot of other programs, being able to stay established in what they've done so far to build their program to be one of the elite level programs in IHSA. South Beloit, on the other hand, they lost quite a bit off of that team that was able to do some things. And when Meyer went down with that injury, you could pretty much tell that he was the guy that made that team go. And unfortunately, he has gone to graduation. So South Beloit has some things that they need to rebuild on. They also have a new coach in place. So there's going to be a lot of things that South Beloit has to get going in their favor for them to see some success here in 2024. Expect the Marcos to roll in this one, provided that they can get everybody up to speed in a quick form and fashion.
This portion of our broadcast is brought to you by Diedrich Epoxy Flooring. Serving northern Illinois and southern Wisconsin, Diedrich Epoxy is the source for all of your epoxy needs. Give Diedrich Epoxy Flooring a call today at 815-239-1158 for your free estimate.
We shift gears over to the NUIC and 11-man football, and the first game we're talking about is the non-conference game on Saturday that sees Dakota hit the road to travel to Dwight. Dwight made the playoffs for the first time since 2018 last year. However, they last won a playoff game in 1983 against Fairbury Cropsey, who is now Prairie Central in a consolidated school district. But Dakota missed the playoffs after a quarterfinal run in 2022. So there's two different aspects going here. The Indians have to come in looking to get the win right out of the gate. They're low on numbers this year. They're going to be expected to play both sides of the ball, which is common in small school football, but they're going to have to be able to get on the gas and stay on the gas for all four quarters. There's a couple plays that kept them out of the playoffs if you really go back and look at a couple games. You had the Forreston game, the Stockton game was another game. They had opportunities to get those wins, and they did not capitalize on those opportunities to make it happen. In order for them to find success this year, they have to go all out all the time. They cannot take plays off, and they have to be behind each other. Dwight, on the other hand, not a very strong team, but obviously a playoff team at the 2A level, were able to get the wins that they needed to in the Chicagoland Christian Conference. They met their demise against Seneca in the first round, one of the teams that was a big contender in the 2A playoffs, and a team that was being talked about as far as being a contender for the 2A state title last year. So Dakota has an opportunity here to get the win on the road, which would definitely put them in the direction that they need to go. As you take a look at their schedule, their first 7 games of the year are all against playoff teams from a year ago. So it's a tough sledding for Dakota. They have the talent to be able to get there. It comes down to if they can pick up and drive that team forward and be able to make it happen. It comes down to that. I have Dakota winning this game, but time will tell come Saturday at 1 o'clock. Forreston at Fulton has become a big game over the past couple of years. Forreston has pretty much owned Fulton in these games, however. And we have another big one here featuring playoff contenders. Forreston overcame an 18-8 deficit last year to pull out a Week 1 win, 22-18. This could be a pivotal win for either team to kick off the 2024 season. With West Carroll leaving the conference and Morrison coming in, Morrison being a team that lost narrowly in the second round of the playoffs to Anawan Wethersfield, who eventually met their demise to Lena Winslow in the quarterfinals. This is definitely going to stiffen up the competition in the NUIC. Obviously, the top of the conference is very tough. It's been pretty much the same teams here for the past couple years, but you also have a couple teams in there that have been very scrappy and able to compete with different teams, a la Stockton and Du-Pec last year in Week 1. Anything can happen on any given night. It comes down to who wants it more. And, going through this week, the temperatures have been hot. Practices have been either short or driven in a different fashion to help keep players energized and from dehydrating, heat stroke, all that stuff. With that said, though, the team that is most conditioned coming into Friday night is probably the team that's going to come out on top. And more times than not, Forreston is one of the best conditioned teams in the NUIC year in and year out. I give them the slight edge in this game, but don't count out the Steamers because they're going to be a tough out all season long. The Galena Pirates will open up at home as the EPC Wildcats come to town. Neither team neither team made the playoffs last year, but both feel that they should belong in that playoff talk this year. Galena won this game 28-6 in week 1 last year. EPC, on the other hand, returns the most starters of any team in the NUIC this year. So there's a good mesh of things that can happen, storylines to talk about. EPC definitely looks a lot stronger this year, definitely should have more team speed, making some moves on the offensive line to not only bolster it up with strength, but also with speed. Galena, on the other hand, had some big guys up front, lost some to graduation. They do return some key players, some big players at the skilled position. So it's going to come down to, can Galena get the line that they need in front of them? Because as far as the skill is concerned, the quarterback, the running backs, the tight end, the receiver, they're back. They're ready to go. They just need to have the protection. And then defensively, they got to be able to limit the big plays. If they can do that, Galena is going to be a very formidable team for every opponent in 2024. EPC is expected to be upping their game as well. This game, probably not game of the week based off of what we have coming up, but at the same time, a big matchup for both teams to kick off week 1. I like EPC in this one to return the score from last year's game. One of the biggest games on the NUIC docket this year lands itself in week 1 as the newcomer to the conference, the Morrison Mustangs, play host to the Lena Winslow Panthers. These two 6 quarterfinals, and someone in this household is still salty about that outcome, but let's not talk about that. Sorry, Carrie. Anyway, Lee Win was 13-1 last year, ending what was then a 32-game winning streak, and they lost that game at state for their first loss at the state championship game. Morrison, on the other hand, dropped a second-round heartbreaker to Anawan Wethersfield, who eventually went on to lose in the quarterfinals to Lena Winslow as well. Lena Winslow lost a lot of players from last year. They do return some key critical players as well. They have to get some replacements on the offensive and defensive lines, which they'll be able to do. But do not expect Lena Winslow to be as big as they were last year. They're going to be sliding some guys into positions that are not up to the size that we're used to seeing out of Lena Winslow. I don't want to say skill, because I do feel that Lena Winslow is still going to have plenty of skill, but you're not going to see the 240, 260-pound guy up front. You're going to see more like 180, 200-pound guy up front that's probably going to be a little bit faster. And that's exactly what I expect to see out of Lena Winslow this year. They're going to be a more athletic overall team that can have a little bit more speed, a little bit more stamina. And then on top of that, they're going to have a QB in Cash Lessman that can help get the play down the field and open up some more offense in their running attack system that Lena Winslow loves to do. On the other side of the ball, Coach Vandermeide has the Mustangs being talked about in a heavy fashion after knocking off a 3A favorite in Princeton last year in the regular season. A tough loss to one of the early favorites in Class 2A to Rock Ridge later in the season was their only regular season loss until they lost to Anawan Wethersfield in the playoffs. Based off of talking to a lot of people from the Morrison area, that was a disappointing loss for the Mustangs, as they were definitely geared to be a team that they felt was in contention for a state championship, looking forward to meeting up with Lena Winslow to see how they could test and match up with the mighty Panthers. But here we are, week 1. They get to see how that looks, and they get to be at home in Mustang country to kick this one off. Lena Winslow is still the slight favorite in this game, but watch for Morrison to be a very fast and explosive team that will likely see themselves towards the top of the NUIC. And I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of the year they could be vying for an opportunity to be a conference champion as well in year 1 in this conference. However, this game, My pick, Lena Winslow. You got to beat them. Till you do, they are the kings of the NUIC. Our last game in the NUIC features Du-Pec at Stockton. This game was a big one that had a lot of surprises in week one just a year ago. Stockton had a lead on Du-Pec late. Du-Pec was able to pull out the game 20-16 to preserve the win. Looking back, that was a game that Stockton felt like they let get away against a very explosive Du-Pec team that reached a 3A quarterfinals for the first time in program history. And they feel that once again they can make a splash here in 2024. But the Rivermen come back with a lot of loaded talent themselves. They do have to replace some guys on the line. They have to get more formidable on their offensive line in order to give their explosive offense the opportunity to let their skill players showcase what they can do. And if they can do that, watch Du-Pec be a team that's going to contend for an NUIC title. Stockton on the other side has some strong kids up front. They're going to have some strong guys in the backfield, and they're looking to bring back that old school style Stockton offense where they can just move the ball down the field. They're going to have to spread it out a little bit, but they're very confident in what they have going on, especially building off of a 4-5 season where they literally just missed making the playoffs. One game in mind was this game against Du-Pec just a year ago. They're going to be at home in Stockton, always an intimidating place to come and play, and it'll be exciting to see what one of the top programs in the entire state collectively over the last 50, 60, 70 years has been able to showcase here with the Rivermen coming to town. Should be a big game there on Route 20. Stockton fans are always in support of the Blackhawks. Du-Pec fans travel very well. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. But my pick in this one is going to the Rivermen.
Our NUICfootball.com state rankings are presented by Leading Edge Fundraising. If you need to raise funds for new uniforms, tournament expenses, equipment, or more, look no further. Brandon Sharp at Leading Edge makes it easy for you and your team to have a fun and competitive way to raise funds for your program. Give Brandon a call today at 563-514-1647. Leading Edge Fundraising, your premier fundraising company.
All right, so let's kick off with our state rankings to open up the 2024 season. I have 8 members on the panel that include myself to help me out with the state rankings this year. We were able to get a couple more people on the state ranking polls, which has definitely helped give us more vision throughout the state. Not that we already didn't have vision from around the state, but we grabbed some new pollsters and getting a little bit of a different view on things. But it's a good view because this is what really helps us become better with what we do. So we'll start in 8-man, and at number 1, as expected, are the Amboy Clippers, the returning state champions. Number 2 are the Polo Marcos. Coming at number 3 are the Milledgeville Missiles. Number 4 is Ridgewood, and at number 5 is Martinsville. Number 6 is going to be St. Thomas More with number 7 Flanagan Cornell Woodland. At number 8 is South Fork. Number 9 is Milford Cisna Park, and rounding out the top 10 is Pawnee. Other teams receiving votes are Orangeville, West Central, Bushnell Prairie City, and South Beloit. Moving into Class 1A, the number 1 team to start off the year in our NUICfootball.com state rankings are the defending state champs, Camp Point Central. At number 2 is another team that is expected to be there at the end of the year, Althoff Catholic. Number 3 come the Lena Winslow Panthers, and at number 4 is Hope Academy. At number 5 is Anawan Wethersfield. And at number 6 is the new team to the NUIC, the Morrison Mustangs. Number 7 is Aurora Christian. Number 8 is Greenfield Northwestern. Number 9 is Leroy. And number 10 is Forreston. Other teams receiving votes include Calhoun, Cesar-Villiers, KZ Westfield, Fulton, Newman Central Catholic, Rockford Lutheran, Rova Williamsfield, and Hayworth. In Class 2A, coming in at number 1 is a team that's, well, used to being in the top 5 of the state rankings every year, and that's Maroa Forsyth. There to give them a run for their money at number 2 is Bloomington Central Catholic. Number 3 is Athens. Number 4 is Rockridge. At number 5 is Tri-Valley. Coming in at number 6 are the Rams of Shelbyville. Number 7 is Mater Dei. Number 8 is Quincy Notre Dame. At number 9 is Farmington. And rounding out the top 10 is Johnston City. Other teams receiving votes include Moments, Chicago Christian, Bismarck, Henning, Rossville, Allen, Redbud, Arthur Lovington, Pana, and Vandalia. In Class 3A, it comes to no surprise the number 1 team is the Byron Tigers. Number 2 is Montini Catholic, and number 3 is Princeton. Coming at number 4 is last year's 2A state champs Wilmington. At number 5 is Roxana. Number 6 is Tolono Unity. Number 7 is Seneca. Number 8 is Williamsville. At number 9 is Du-Pec. And number 10 is last year's 3A state runner-up Mount Carmel. Other teams receiving votes include Monmouth-Roseville, DuQuoin, Nashville, Stillman Valley, Olympia, Oregon, St. Joseph Ogden, and Greenville. So that gives you a look at our Week 1 matchups in IHSA for the North Division plus Amboy in the West Division, along with our NUIC contingent, and then, of course, the follow-up of our state rankings from 8-man to Class 3A. Should be a great Week 1. Nice warm temperatures before we get to that cold weather as we move forward into the fall and eventually the winter months. As we make the march for the next 14 weeks to Bloomington Normal for the state championship games at Illinois State University, and of course the 8-man state championships the week before Thanksgiving on Friday night at Monmouth College. Get out to the games, support your teams. As always, root for the NUIC.